All right, and there we go. That's unfortunate. My bad.
We got to start back at the beginning again.
Yeah, let's talk all about that again. So for all those watching the recording, we had a good discussion on just how to think about monitoring your node, making contingency plans if you're not available to monitor your node by yourself 24 hours a day. If you know you're going to be out of cell reception, maybe get somebody else as a backup. Zantetsu mentioned that he doesn't have that, and it's been problematic. So something to think about. And then we've talked about Watchtower. So Watchtower is a tool that can monitor your node health as well as cluster health. It could send alerts to Slack, Telegram, Twilio, and soon PagerDuty once that gets from master to a branch. Yeah, unfortunately, we missed a good discussion, but hopefully that sums it up. Anything else I forgot there? No? Okay, cool. So let's keep going. Thanks. All right, so I've got a thing I'd just like to plug here. If you have not run Watchtower yet or you haven't set it up, this guide here, let me go back to the link, Solana Validator guidebook.com. If you just go to best practices, you can find the info. I'll put it in, let's see here, I'll put it in the chat as well. This has a setup instruction for Telegram, which I've worked through and it should work. It's kind of convoluted. You have to use a bot to talk to a channel that you create. I don't know if it's worthwhile for me to go through these instructions right now, but the point being that once you set this up, you can have Watchtower monitor your node and the cluster and send alerts to a Telegram group that you've set up with the bot. So I found it pretty useful for monitoring things. We talked a little bit as well about sort of filtering monitors on your filtering alerts on your phone and how you might do that. People used different ringtones and different settings for the app so that it sounds different. It's like a sort of a Pavlovian response thing. When you hear this certain sound, you know it's something wrong with the Solana node or cluster. Yeah, Zantetsu, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that one goal is something we've kind of talked about, and I know you've championed yourself, is that we probably should come up with some way that there is sort of I don't want to say a centralized service, but there's a validator cooperative that is running some easier way to get these things. Because if everyone has to set up their own bot and everyone has to set up their own, Watchtower with their, running on some server somewhere, then, it is a barrier to entry for people that, we want everyone to have alerting. Like, it's better for the cluster if we just make it so that everyone can have it as easily as possible. And that's, I think, the goal of that project that's kind of on the back burner for a lot of people, to create some kind of service. This is great to have these instructions, and everyone should be trying to do something like this, but making it easier and making it automatic so that no one has to run a Watchtower somewhere on some, cloud server somewhere that's separate from their validator, would be helpful. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think longer term, that's the right solution, to have something where you can just put in your info for PagerDuty or for maybe even just your SMS, like your phone number, and then it'll notify you automatically without you having to manage things. I think for the time being, this is the best approach. But yeah, I agree. Like, making it easier, making it super simple so people don't have to worry about it is better. Sort of one. Oh, go ahead.
I'd be a bit worried though, because it's not actually that hard to set this up, and I think validators need to take a little bit of responsibility with this. But the problem is, if you centralize the alerting system, if the alerting system goes down, then everyone's out, right? Let's say that everyone switched to this central system and it goes down, no one will know about it. Kind of similar to the RPCs, right? The RPCs are kind of the weak point, because we're all using the RPCs to monitor validator or the blockchain. That goes down, we all get fake alerts, we don't get alerts. So I don't know, I kind of like the idea that it's kind of decentralized, at least the monitoring service.
Yeah, and I think the best way to do that is to make it reproducible. Like, don't just have one person run a service or one group. Have one group create an open source solution that they run one instance of, but that anyone can run their own, so that you could actually, if you wanted to, set up your own instance fairly easily to run it for yourself, or a separate collective could have their own, or a second group of validators that have their own cooperative, grouping could do it. I think that would be the best thing, because I agree with you completely. Like, we don't have one single point of failure even in that thing. Yeah.
So you're just saying basically a easier way to set this up, like just like one little button you click and sign up or install it.
Easier way to create a more, an instance of a more centralized service that's easier, but isn't necessarily the only instance of that, because anyone, and hopefully we would have smaller groups themselves cooperating to run these things, their own instances of these things. But that in the worst possible case, it is true, like some alerting is better than none. So those people that wouldn't participate at all, at least having one pre-canned solution available to them is better than nothing. That would be the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the more accessible and easy it is, where you just one click and you're monitoring your node, is way better than a lot of people just ignoring it because they don't want to read docs and figure it out.
Also, I was thinking that, I don't know, I had this vision that maybe something could be done on chain too. I realize that doesn't work at the time that the cluster goes down. That's not effective. But if it's about, like, I can register myself on chain way ahead of time, and I can know that there are services that are picking up that information and will then, put me into their database and alert me, I at least have some confidence that sort of like the validator set itself is cooperating all this by virtue of running the chain and keeping this data alive. And I have even thought maybe we should have a service where, like, as long as, like, say 10% of stake, like, vote on a message, then the message gets sent out via this, so we could even have, like, alerts that are, kind of like 10% of the cluster is able to broadcast a message to everyone else if they all agree to do it by voting on it. I don't know, just concepts like that in case we have some emergency situation that requires something unique. We have some way for a trusted set, assuming 10% is enough of a barrier that we're not going to get spammed, because at least 10% of the validator set has to vote that yes, this message should go out. Then maybe we can send messages out that are custom and specific to a situation. That's another idea I had.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. I think maybe something like Dialect could support that. But yeah, something to think about.
I had a thought.
Go
the Solana phone.
What about it?
Right? Use that. Have that be integrated into the.
Yeah, that would be a great idea too.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it.
Just all Solana phones get a.
Our own data all the time, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'm sure a lot of people who are buying the Solana phone, at least right now, are pretty, like, invested in the, the overall ecosystem and making sure it prospers. So yeah, good thinking. Okay, so anyway, here's some setup instructions. I would like to add more. If anyone is interested in working with me on this or adding more docs, let me know. Ben from Cogent Crypto and I are working a little bit on PagerDuty setup, but happy to get feedback and get more input on setup for Slack or Twilio or whatever custom thing you're doing. Cool. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about with Watchtower. Let's talk a little bit now about metrics. I'm curious here. I'm not exactly the expert on metrics. I'm curious what people monitor and what they have set up. But I'll just talk a little bit about general setup stuff first, and then we can open up the discussion. So yeah, just a sort of background. Solana logs emit metrics. In order to capture those logs, you need to send them somewhere. It's recommended by the labs team that you send those metrics to the labs cluster so that the labs team has a cluster-wide view of what's going on and a more complete view. Anyone actually in the delegation program is required to send metrics now so that we have at least a good percentage of the nodes in the cluster aware of what's going on. And yeah, there is a Solana Labs Grafana that you can use once you send your metrics to Solana Labs. So pretty simple setup if you're running a testnet or a mainnet validator.
Hey, sir. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, so I've seen that thing about sending metrics to the Solana Labs. How exactly are you exporting? How's
Great
it
question.
be set up? Yeah.
Yeah. That's this section. So in order to send metrics to Solana Labs, all you have to do is check out this Solana clusters site.
Okay.
So docs.solana.com/clusters. Depending on what cluster you're running on, let's say testnet for this example, you just need to export this environment variable and then restart your node. So once you do that, you have the proper environment variable set. It just does it automatically for you.
Maybe that's what's the problem with my delegation.
Yeah, that's definitely the problem. Yeah.
Well, I know it shows up on like the testnet one, but the mainnet one doesn't show up. And I think maybe that's what it is.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I could look into it. I know
yeah.
we've got a combo going.
Yeah,
so.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the setup. Once you do that, you've got metrics sent to labs. Any questions on that?
Tim, can you view those metrics? Like, can I see stats on my validator?
Yep. So let me pull up a window here and talk a little bit about it.
Because I found some Grafana tutorial and it did not go well.
Yeah, I think that's honestly that confused me up until like today after talking with some people. So the Grafana for labs is available, and you can look at metrics for your node pretty easily. So you don't have to. There's other options that I'll mention, right? So there's like, let me actually just open up Discord here. One sec, let me grab the resources. So for those who don't know, there is a resources channel in Discord, and I think that was updated a while ago, but you can see all the different links out here for different useful things for validators. In this section, there's some info on monitoring and metrics, and there's a couple different options here that you can set up. So these are all metrics solutions that are run by you, right? They're like your own personal metrics dashboard. You don't need to set any of these up if you don't want to, if you want to just use the lab setup. So I think that's what is confusing a lot of people if they're just getting started. Like all these things are optional, but not required. So let me talk a little bit about my testnet node. Where did we go? Here we go. So if you look at my testnet setup, I've got system D here, and I can system D. You can see to run my Solana Validator, I've got this environment variable here for this one. Sorry. Solana metrics config, and it's being exported to testnet. So as long as you have that environment variable set, you can then go to Grafana. Let me make sure I've got the right link here. One sec. There we go. So this is one of the dashboards that you can look at. This is replay. It's giving me all these errors because I don't have an identity key that I'm looking at, but I can specify that. So let's go to testnet and then use the host ID here from my validator. One thing to note is that Grafana seems to be pretty busted with autocomplete. So don't start typing your validator identity key and then assume that it's going to be there. Just paste the entire thing and hit enter. And it'll take a second. Some of these dashboards take a while to load. There we go. Well, might take longer than I had hoped. But these are things that you can monitor, right? So all you have to do is set that environment variable. You can see replay times, store times, slots. Let's see what's interesting here. Well, replay times are useful, right? So this is telling you how long it takes to replay a shred from another validator. So you get some shred that was sent from, let's say, validator A. You're trying to run POH on that shred and making sure that it's a valid block, and then adding it to your ledger. The replay time here has a bit of a spike at about 7:30. And 600 milliseconds is a little high. So maybe something you investigate either from, I don't know, whatever you want to look into, right? Like maybe the CPU just can't handle the load. Maybe there's some IO issue. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there was just a lot of traffic on the network, so something like that. I'm not really sure, honestly, what this means, but maybe something to investigate more. Let's see. I'm showing sort of the limits of my knowledge on metrics here. Any questions about just that general setup before we talk a little bit more?
Yeah, could you show your service again?
Sure. What about the service?
Where you had the environment variable put in
Oh,
there?
yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna screenshot it real quick.
Oh, yeah. There we go. This path is a little screwed up, so this part I can delete. But
Sam, don't forget that's for testnet. You'll need to change it for mainnet.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I got the environment equals the right question or
yeah.
code. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so just for completeness, this environment variable is testnet specific. If you want the one for mainnet, go to this docs.solana.com/clusters, and the mainnet one would be here.
Cool.
Cool.
I got to do that mainnet upgrade too, so I'll do that and restart it.
Yeah, useful thing to do.
Yeah.
Where did my? There we go. Zentetsu, go ahead.
Yeah, related to what you were just talking about, I was just wondering if anybody here has any stories they can tell about successfully using that dashboard to diagnose any issues they may have had. I look at that and my eyes glaze over. There's so much information. I can't quite tell what's normal, what's not normal, what to do with it. And if anybody has any insights, I'd love to hear them.
I'd be surprised if anyone here is actually knew they could get here.
Yeah, I think it's not very well publicized, which is an issue. And I also think that there's not a lot of knowledge sharing around what all these metrics are useful for. And I think that's somewhat unfortunate and also somewhat on purpose, right? I think there's some sentiment that you don't want people to make false assumptions based on limited understanding of the cluster, but then at the same time, if you don't ever educate people, that they're not going to have a better understanding of the cluster. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I think it can be improved. I think we can do more to learn this stuff and teach this stuff, because I definitely need to know more.
And I have a feeling that it's actually probably related to that resource link to the metrics guide to set up your own Grafana. I have a feeling that was set up before metrics was mandatory with the foundation, or maybe you're not in the foundation. So maybe that's why everyone's following that link to set up their own Grafana. Then they're probably failing at it because it's pretty complicated, when instead you could just go here and it's already done, which is, I think, pretty nice.
Yeah, I know that metrics, this page has been here for a while. I didn't know we were supposed to be exporting to it though. So
yeah,
that was a year ago when I set up ours. So
yeah, good feedback. I think I can improve a couple things right off the bat to make that a little bit more straightforward.
I heard Trent saying he wanted to nuke the resources because it was the dump, so don't mention it.
Yeah, yeah. He also mentioned that to me. I think he wanted to make it smaller, at least, because there are probably a good amount of things that are obsolete or people don't use or whatever. So yeah, I've got to do that. But yeah, I'm curious, is the answer sort of no to Zantetsu's question, that people don't have a lot of useful stories out of these metrics?
There was a time, I don't know when it was, like 4 months ago, when we were having a lot of, I don't remember what the situation was, a lot of spamming something, and lots of people were looking at these metrics. We had daily conversations about, oh, why I see this in my chart, this is my chart. And the feeling I got was that, except for Solana Labs, people who really know what they're looking at, it was mostly a lot of kind of noise. People really can't quite tell what they're looking at. That being said, I found that over time, you know, looking at logs itself, I've become kind of like a log whisperer. I can like look at my logs and kind of just tell from the shape of what's happening, things about, say, the startup process. And I have a feeling that if you spend a lot of time looking at these and watching these a lot of times, you'd probably sort of become a graph whisperer. You kind of be able to tell when things are at least the general shape of some things. And it would be, I don't know, be interesting if someone got that level of expertise, that they can distill it down.
Yeah. I'm curious, from your experience, are there like important logs that you tend to look at a lot, or things, some sort of process that you've set up? Because I've seen you mention before in Discord that you don't really look at metrics dashboards.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not, you know, I'm not sophisticated in that way. I also find that I want to know whether it's working or not. And beyond that, I feel like I'm just mostly going to get kind of like misled into believing something significant when it isn't. I've also found, after a year and a half of operating my node, that I've never needed to know how much memory it was using, how much disk it was using. It's always been well within bounds for me. So it's never been, but of course that's only useful until the moment when it isn't anymore. And then you kind of maybe wish you had been watching that. But in terms of logs, I've mostly, it's around startup. Like I could just kind of tell from the pace of logs, from what log messages I've seen, what phase it's in, how much longer it's going to take before it gets to this next phase. There's phases where you can tell it's running through a loop, and you see sort of common logging going. You know, I know, okay, it's in the phase where it's building indexes, or it's in the phase where it's cleaning up accounts. And finally, it's in the phase where it's getting very close to, like, you can kind of see almost that cycle get faster and faster, and then you know it's almost done, and now it's going to start voting. Those are the kind of things I've come good at. There are also a couple logs that I've keyed in on that indicate problems, but I can't really recall them off the top of my head. It's kind of situation specific.
Are you saying you don't use your own Grafana?
No, I've never run that. I'm a little bit averse. I was always a little bit averse to running any software on the validator I didn't need to, and that included, like, you know, anything that could gather metrics. But I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I'm not saying that's the right way. It's just the way I do it.
So not from this community metrics, but from our own.
Yeah, for this,
I get a lot of information out of it, actually, and find issues.
I do export the variable, and I do submit metrics to this site just because it's a public good for Solana Labs to have information that they can look at. But I don't have my own Grafana personally. Just so
I find it very helpful to have the personal one. Just
like helpful.
Know if we're using swap space or disk. Yeah.
But what have you done in response to that information? Like, have you realized you need more swap space at some point or something like that?
Or notice that the memory's growing like super fast. Restarts and I don't know. At least I don't know. It gives me a nice feeling that I know what's going on.
I mean, that's important too, right? Just to feel like things are operating well.
Well, like I said, I mean, the good thing about it is if you become used to seeing certain things, you will notice when something has changed, you know? So
yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, that's it. I mean, probably the biggest thing that I look at like every day or a couple times a day is I look at how many slots I missed, that the votes are still going up. They look that the chart, the graph for votes is increasing like it should, and that's probably 90% of it.
Yeah, and Sam, I would say also on that, as we look at it, when the networks have stalled in the past, it was kind of an indicator that it wasn't us so much versus the network. We kind of looked there first, and then we were able to kind of continue on and start going elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I find interesting about this particular dashboard is something happened between 7 and 8 a.m. So that to me obviously tells me nothing, but then I know that if I needed to figure it out, I go look at logs. So it'd be interesting, and I've noticed there's not really a clean way to get logs to Solana. So maybe something we can improve here is an easy way to get logs between 7 and 8 a.m. to be able to upload to labs so then they can analyze it. Because I kind of agree with Zantetsu. Our job is probably running validators, not necessarily analyzing logs, because we're not very good at it. So maybe get it to the right people, and it takes them 5 minutes to be like, oh, we had this strange outage between 7 to 8 a.m. Here's my logs. Maybe there's something to take a look at.
I think that's a great idea. I've worked in companies where we had products in the field that gathered logs, and we had some pretty sophisticated methods of pulling those logs and pulling ranges of logs. It would be very interesting if we could opt into allowing Solana Labs to pull our logs when they think that they need it. I've had Solana Labs employees ask me specifically, hey, can you give me this log from this range? I would be happy to run a service that lets them pull them when they need them, you know, just as an idea.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, it's pretty ad hoc right now. So to respond to Brian, the way that it works currently is that when you report metrics to labs, they get all the metrics that they've put in the logs, right? So the logs are parsed and metrics are sent to the Grafana, but all the detail in the logs may be missed, right? There could be some lines that are important for debugging purposes that aren't in the metrics. So yeah, in that case, something like Zentetsu's mentioning would be helpful because it is pretty ad hoc right now, right? I've been involved in plenty of conversations where they're trying to debug something and we need to talk to a validator who has some logs that might be important for, you know, different reasons.
For example, when we do a grant proposal, don't forget about me.
Do it. I mean, these are all opportunities for people to like make impact and, you know, getting sort of like recognition is important. And I think these are the kind of things that people can do. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, and I mean, you know, grant proposals are open, right? So if you have an idea that's validator specific, and you're passionate about it and you want to work on it, I'm sure I could talk to the grants team and sort of like, you know, move it along, make sure it gets noticed at least, and see if it's useful for the cluster. There's a question in the chat that I just want to make sure we cover quickly. Maxim says that there's any way to export metrics into an in-house monitoring. Yeah, so that's what's available in the resources that I mentioned earlier in Discord. Let's look at these. So in this in this resources section here, if you scroll about a page down or so, there's a section, where did it go? I think this is what Trent was complaining about. There's a lot of stuff.
It's right below you, right there.
Yeah, node monitoring and metrics dashboards. Any of these options is your own in-house metrics setup. So you can have your own Grafana dashboard or your own whatever you want to set up outside of the lab's reporting, if you so choose. If you don't want to set it up yourself, it's perfectly fine to just send your metrics to labs and then use labs Grafana. So you don't have to worry about any of the managing of this or setting this up. Cool. Yeah, good discussion. Let's see, is there anything else I want to cover here? That was pretty much it. Yeah, I appreciate all the like feedback and discussion, and I think this is sort of the format I want to keep going for any of these educational calls, because I think people are a little hesitant to talk in the validator community discussion, and this feels much more collaborative and interactive. So I appreciate everyone coming and participating for all these workshops. Been super useful. I want to take just a couple minutes to sort of get some feedback if people want to give it. Like, is this useful to you? How often should we do it? And what changes do you think should be made, if any?
I mean, I think they're super useful. Just I'll leave it up to you for pace, but I mean, if these were around, like even if they were kind of like, let's say you did let's say every 6 months you repeated some of them, because like when I first started, they weren't here, but somebody who started like, let's say in the last 3 weeks, it'd be really useful for them. But then if somebody starts in 4 weeks, they may not have seen this. So if it's like a rolling thing, it could be useful. It's for repeating. Maybe I won't show up to the new one, or I probably would, because there's just so many little things that you don't really know about that you can catch on to. But I think it's really useful.
Awesome, thanks. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think one thing that we'll have to kind of figure out is cadence, because I think at least my knowledge will get exhausted quickly enough if we do it every week. But it would be useful to find out kind of like how often makes sense. And then also, I would really, really like to get more people involved and have it be less of me presenting and more of like other people in the community talking about something they're excited about. I think generally speaking, educating people in the community is good for everyone, right? The more knowledgeable operators we have, the quicker we're going to have restarts. If there's ever an outage, the quicker we're going to sort of like share information, and just overall better we'll all do. So anyway, I'm gonna talk about this a little bit tomorrow in the community call, but just want to mention that if anyone's interested in presenting or bringing a topic to talk about, that would be amazing. Any other
Yeah,
thoughts?
I like this the community validators. Sometimes you guys have people come in and chat about things. I think that would be really awesome if somebody's, you know, building a tool for the newer validators, or if they want to talk about their experience, like, you know, trying to set up Grafana, those kinds of things. I think would be really awesome, because a lot of us are making the same mistakes over and over again.
There's a question from Zentetsu if you're inclined to answer or not.
Yeah, I am. I'm just a testnet right now, but I decided to build my own mainnet instead of buying a server, so it's in pieces and it's getting built right now. And I've been kind of hesitant to start up the mainnet because I wanted to make sure that I had everything covered on testnet. I'm feeling pretty comfortable right now, and I'm Calros on Discord if you want to put Brian to that name. Yeah.
I suspected as much, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we've had many conversations about that too.
Okay.
I mean,
Cool.
I'll just say I do like this more social format. It's easy to get kind of cynical and I don't know what on Discord and get kind of bad attitudes are easy to come to, because I don't know, after enough time on there and especially in the past when we had lots of users coming in there, we were kind of constantly bombarded and you can kind of get cynical. But I think in this kind of environment, you know, we revert back to a more social way of interacting, which I think is beneficial because it's also more welcoming, you know. So this is a place where new validators, although they may feel intimidated in Discord, maybe we can make them feel a lot more welcomed in a format like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
By the way, I'm totally the most guilty person on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, I think about this before I post anything in Discord. I'm like, is Shinobi gonna yell at me or not? He's gonna say you should know this.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean,
I'm just joking. You're super helpful, man. I'm just joking with you.
Yeah,
I love seeing everyone's faces, and I would encourage like everyone to do that. It just makes it more personable, and yeah, I think it's especially, you know, if you're going to meet in person, you know, at Breakpoint, or potentially if you're around local areas, just having that human connection is really great.
Yeah, I would also second that. Like, I think that education and just helping people that are a little newer is the way to make the cluster better, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that need to know certain things and they're just afraid to ask. So the more we can get people up to speed and educated and feeling welcome, the better for the cluster, right? Especially if they're running a mainnet node. Cool. All right. Well, we're pretty much out of time. I want to thank everybody for attending all the classes you attended, and just really appreciate the participation. Like I had mentioned before, I'm going to sort of reassess the plan after Breakpoint and figure out what the right cadence and just sort of format is for this, but I definitely want to keep it going. So appreciate any feedback you've got. You could either DM me or I'll post a Google form right after this too, if you want to just post some thoughts anonymously. But appreciate
we should probably do a meetup at Breakpoint too.
Yeah, that's going to be a topic for the community call tomorrow, but okay. Want to do a meetup.
Cool. I bought tickets yesterday. I'm going.
Cool. All right, I'll see you there. I'll be there on the 3rd.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Bye.